They laughed at the cleaner in court, then he became their lawyer. The courtroom buzzed with quiet chatter that morning. Lawyers shuffled papers, their expensive suits glistening under the fluorescent lights. Then the door creaked open. A man walked in not in a polished suit, not carrying a briefcase, but pushing a mop and bucket. His uniform was faded, his shoes worn thin. He kept his eyes down as he cleaned around the chairs. And then laughter. One young attorney leaned toward his colleague and whispered, loud enough for others to hear. "Look at him. A mop in his hand, that's the only thing he'll ever hold in this place." The courtroom chuckled. Another lawyer sneered. Imagine him trying to argue a case. What a joke. But little did they know the man they mocked would soon silence the entire courtroom. Keep watching this video. Subscribe to this channel to keep getting more interesting videos from our channel. Don't forget to like this video and comment where you are watching from. They laughed at the cleaner in court, then he became their lawyer. His name was James Carter, 52 years old. For nearly a decade, he had worked as a janitor in the courthouse. Day after day, he cleaned the very floors that powerful judges, wealthy lawyers, and arrogant prosecutors walked upon. To most people, James was invisible. Just the cleaner. The man who emptied trash bins and scrubbed toilets. But what no one knew was that James hadn't always been just a cleaner. Years ago, James had been one of the brightest law students in his class. He dreamed of becoming a defense attorney who stood up for the powerless. But life had other plans. His wife was diagnosed with cancer. Treatment costs drained his savings. James dropped out of law school, taking any job he could just to keep food on the table and medicine in her hands. She eventually passed away. Broken, grieving, and with no degree, James turned to cleaning jobs to survive. But he never stopped reading, never stopped studying. Every night, after long shifts, he sat with borrowed law books, studying the same cases the lawyers upstairs argued every day. He knew the law inside out, but no one knew that about him. On this particular morning, the courthouse was filled with tension. A young man, barely 19, stood trial for armed robbery. The prosecution painted him as a criminal, a menace to society. But James knew the boy Marcus. He lived in James's neighborhood. James had seen him grow up. He knew Marcus wasn't violent, just poor and desperate, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. But Marcus's lawyer didn't show up. The boy stood alone at the defense table, terrified, eyes darting around the courtroom. The judge frowned. "Where is his attorney?" the judge asked. "Silence." The prosecutor smirked. "Your Honor, if no counsel is present, perhaps we should move forward. Clearly, this young man doesn't have proper representation." James froze. He looked at Marcus, scared, abandoned. Something inside him snapped. He could no longer just sweep floors while injustice walked free. He set down his mop, straightened his back, and with a steady voice said, "Your Honor, if the court allows, I will represent him." The courtroom exploded with laughter. "You? A cleaner?" One lawyer scoffed. "Don't waste the court's time," another jeered. But the judge narrowed his eyes and said to him, "And you are?" James took a deep breath. "James Carter. I studied law years ago. I never took the bar, but I've continued to study on my own. I know this case. I know this law." The judge stared for a long moment. The prosecutor rolled his eyes. The gallery murmured in disbelief. Finally, the judge said, "Very well. The boy deserves representation. Mr. Carter, you may proceed." James walked to the defense table. He had no expensive suit, no polished shoes, no fancy briefcase. Just a second-hand jacket he kept in his locker and a stack of notes written by hand. The prosecutor smirked. "This will be easy." But as James began to speak, the air shifted. He didn't fumble. He didn't stumble. His voice was calm, commanding. He laid out Marcus's story, his background, his struggle, his lack of opportunity. He dissected the evidence piece by piece. "The prosecution claims Marcus was seen near the store," James said, pacing slowly. "But the security footage is grainy. And the eyewitness? He admitted he only saw a hoodie, not a face. Are we ready to destroy a young man's life over assumptions?" The courtroom grew quiet. James turned directly to the jury. "This boy is not a hardened criminal. He is a son, a neighbor, a human being. Justice is not about winning cases, it's about truth. And the truth is, the state has not proven his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt." Even the judge leaned forward, listening intently. The lawyers who had mocked James earlier now sat frozen, their smirks erased. The prosecutor scrambled, objecting, but James countered every point with razor-sharp knowledge. He cited case precedents, quoted laws, and pointed out flaws in the prosecution's argument with surgical precision. It was as if he had been a lawyer his entire life. The final blow came when James revealed a piece of overlooked evidence. Marcus had been working a shift at a nearby diner that very night. Time-stamped receipts and a coworker's testimony proved he couldn't have committed the crime. Gasps filled the courtroom. The prosecutor's confidence crumbled. The jury whispered among themselves, and Marcus's eyes filled with tears, hope returning to his face. Hours later, the jury returned with a verdict, not guilty. Marcus broke down, sobbing. James placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. The judge leaned forward, his tone softer than before. "Mr. Carter, today, you reminded us all what true justice looks like. You may not wear a suit like the others, but you carry something far more important: integrity." The entire courtroom stood in stunned silence. The same lawyers who mocked James earlier now looked at him with respect and shame. As James walked out of the courtroom, mop bucket still waiting by the door, he said quietly, "Never judge a man by the dirt on his hands, but by the truth in his heart." This story reminds us that respect should never depend on status, wealth, or titles. The one you look down on today may be the one who saves you tomorrow. Prejudice blinds us, but justice sees clearly. And in the end, truth always finds its voice, even if it comes from the most unexpected places.